Hey, it's Tim.
This is J-Dom.
I'm Dirty D.
This is Bone.
With Grateful Shred 6.
Supporting Dan.
And preserving Arizona wilderness.
And the Mexican Grey Wolf.
Please follow us all on Facebook and Instagram.
And now for Part B, Kendrick Mountain and protecting the Mexican gray wolves.
Our guest today is Claire Musser, Executive Director of the Grand Canyon Wolf Recovery Project. Claire, tell us about your project.
Yeah, so the Grand Canyon Wolf Recovery Project, we're advocating for wolves to be reintroduced into the Grand Canyon ecoregion. So we know that they're going to restore the ecological health of the region, and we also want to respect the intrinsic value of our wolves as well. So that's our main mission. So we had wolves all around this area and we need them back. So that's what we're working towards. I actually got to the US in 2019, and one of my first things to do was get up to Yellowstone and go and find the wolves I've heard so much about. And then when I was there, I thought there has to be wolves closer. There's got to be wolves near me in Arizona. And then that's when I discovered we had Mexican grey wolves. So because of COVID, I went back and got my master's in anthrozoology. So I study human-wildlife interactions. And from there, I decided that my dissertation was going to be about Mexican grey wolf recovery from the perspective of the wolves. So that's really what got me started back in 2020. I went out and I connected with all of the SAFE programs. I went out into the White Mountains. I spoke to all of the organisations working with Mexican grey wolves. And then when the opportunity came up to take on the role of Executive Director with the Grand Canyon Wolf Recovery Project, I just had to go for it, and I had to say yes. Oh, so Mexican grey wolves, they are the smallest, most distinct subspecies of grey wolf. And so you have the grey wolves further north in Colorado. They're our closest wolves right now. And then you've got the Mexican grey wolves. So they're protected, they have additional protections that grey wolves to the north don't have, because they're they're classed as a 10J listing, which means that they're non-essential and experimental. So what that means is, okay, it's just an experiment. If everything goes wrong, no worries, we'll start again. And they're not essential. Do we need them? Well, who knows? Maybe not so much. And so whenever you see our messaging, we're like, no, they're not just an experiment. They have their own individual lives. They can feel pain, they can suffer, they can thrive, they play, they experience all of these things, and their lives are just as important to them as mine is to me. So they're not just your science experiment, and they are essential. We've seen the benefits of wolves restoring the ecological health of the Yellowstone National Park. So we know that they're really important, and we need our predators on our landscape. They keep everything in check. They keep the deer and the elk moving, and it gives opportunities for our beavers to return as well. So yeah, so Mexican grey wolves, it's obviously a lot warmer down here, and so our wolves are smaller and distinct, and then there would have been a natural buffer between grey wolves and Mexican grey wolves. There would have been that gradation, and a lot of the recovery plan is about what the world used to look like. So recovering wolves into their historic range, which they decided as humans was south of the I-40. But we have got evidence that wolves were outside of that area. But also, we seem to be more concerned about restoring and making up for the wrongs of the past, rather than reflecting on what the future of wolf recovery is going to look like. So with climate change and everything else going on, we've got our fragmented habitats. The world is never going to be what it was. We're never going to get back what we've lost. So let's start learning from the wolves, watching the wolves, listening to what the wolves are trying to show us, and then we can start thinking about the future of Mexican grey wolf recovery. And I always wonder, how Mexican grey wolf do you need to be a Mexican grey wolf? Because there will be a chance where we get genetic recovery from wolves from the north. Whereas from the policy perspective, they're thinking more of that as genetic purity. But I'm pretty sure the wolves don't care about that. They just want to be healthy, they want to thrive, and they just want to find their own way, and we need to start listening. Yeah, so the Grand Canyon ecoregion, we've also got the Grand Canyon National Park, and so we want wolves to be able to freely disperse and travel into this region, and they're showing us that that's what they need. So part of that is the Kendrick Peak area, which is north of the I-40, and so what people don't realise is when we're talking about the Grand Canyon ecoregion, you've got the Grand Canyon, and you've also got alongside that the largest ponderosa forest in the world. So we need our wolves back there, and that's exactly where they want to go and where they belong.
Have there been wolves in the Kendrick wilderness?
There have. So not so long ago was Anubis. He was our wandering wolf that was in the same area. And if you look at the maps of where Anubis was wandering before he tragically got shot when he was mistaken for a coyote. But we've got two wolves, Hope and Mystery, that we know of. There could well be more wolves. And they're in the same area that Anubis was exploring. So wolves are telling us and showing us exactly where they want to be. And I've had my volunteers out there. They've been having a look around the area. They've been looking for scat and tracks and signs of the two wolves. And they've been successful, and they've managed to stumble across them 4 times now while they've been out there looking at the cameras. So that's pretty impressive, and I couldn't do this work without my awesome volunteers. When I did my master's programme, my dissertation was about Mexican grey wolf recovery from the perspective of the wolves. So I got to meet the wolves in the captive facilities within about 500 miles of Phoenix. And then in the wild, I haven't been lucky enough to see them in person yet. I've heard them howl.
Okay.
So I heard the Rocky Prairie Pack howling, and I've obviously seen the scat and the tracks, and I've been out there looking. But I mean, that's the thing, wolves are very neophobic. They're scared of new things. They don't want to be near people. They want to stay out of the way. So it's great that they're hard to find, because that's what's going to keep them safe at the end of the day.
Did you say that you've come close to them in the breeding programs?
Yeah, so that was when I was watching and sitting and doing 2-3 hour observations to see whether the wolves were going to pair. So that was really special for me, and I got to really appreciate what the wolves are doing for the recovery of their species. But I think we can get so caught up in the what it means as a species, we neglect to think about what it means to be an individual wolf, and that's something that I hope can start to change. The captive wolves that we have, of Mexican grey wolves, they're in the SAFE program, so saving species from extinction, and that is what they're doing. They're out there. They're moving wolves around between facilities as well, based on like their personalities, their genetics, to see whether they will pair and whether they will breed. So that is a very important program. But I think as well we need to remember that these wolves have individual lives. So when you are moving and separating pairs and moving them to other facilities for the good of the species, you've also got to think about what the impact of that is going to be on their lives. Because I've met wolves that have been really well paired in one facility and been moved to another facility, and that relationship fractures and they can't get that back. So we have to be mindful of what we are doing. And sanctuaries in general, you've got Southwest Wildlife as well, it's all about rescue, rehab and release, and so giving these animals the chance to, you know, go back into the wild or to have a safe place to live out the rest of their lives. I think again, learning about their individual stories for me is a lot more powerful and captivating than it is just learning about what they eat and where they live. So I think we've got a lot that we can learn. There's also a bit of inconsistency between wolves in captive facilities as well. So you might have a wolf that's been on a carnivore diet, so like a raw diet, and then they move to a facility where they're on a dry diet. They might go from a place where they get fed once a week to getting fed twice a day. So that all of these things are going to impact the lives of these individual wolves. And so I think consistency and really thinking about what it means, because right now all of our Mexican grey wolves in the captive program, in the SAFE program, are in almost what you would describe as a holding pattern. So in theory, as an experimental population, any of these wolves could go back out into the wild. But we know that they can't because they've been habituated to humans. So it's all very, I think we need to start thinking about this on a individual basis and thinking about what each of these wolves need. If we know they're never going to go back out into the wild, then what can we do for them to have, you know, enrich their lives more when they are in captivity, rather than just, yeah, thinking of them as a number. Oh, I have about 15 active volunteers, and then on my camera trapping project, I've got 4 dedicated volunteers. So my rock star, have to say, volunteers, they come from NAU. So, and those guys are also they're doing one of the forestry and environmental science courses. So they are not only are they volunteering with me, not only are they helping the mission, not only are they looking out there for the wolves, but they're also building their resume and they're preparing themselves for careers in wildlife conservation. So they're getting all of the skills that they need, and they also get to take ownership of the project as well.
So aside from your volunteers, who I'm sure are really excited about this project, have other people who have either hiked Kendrick or live near Kendrick, have they had any kind of response about the wolves? Do people know this, or do you have you had positive or negative responses, or a bit of both?
Yeah, so really overwhelmingly positive responses we've had from people that live in that area. There's a community group that are out there keeping an eye on what's going on and looking out for the wolves as well. I haven't heard whether they've seen the wolves yet, I don't think so, but there's a community, they're out there too. When we first learnt about the wolves, that must have been back in June, I did have one call about a hobby rancher that was concerned about her goats. But we talked through the process, we talked through what it means to be having wolves on the landscape, and I also, showed her that there are resources available should you be worried about, having your hobby ranch alongside wolves. But we haven't heard of any other community members. I know there has been some conflict, again, with some of the cows out there on the landscape, but I haven't heard whether that was confirmed or not.
Okay, have any of the ranchers commented?
Not, I know the ranchers, it's interesting because as the wolves are moving around, the cows are now coming off the landscape. So right now, there's less cows out there, so we haven't heard of any more conflicts from that perspective. But I think that's a really important question, because what we need to do is, as our wolves are moving into new areas, we need to set up and provide communities with the resources for preventative conflict mitigation, rather than waiting for something bad to happen and being reactive when emotions running really high. That puts the cattle at risk, that puts the wolves at risk, that creates tensions in the community. So right now we have the perfect opportunity to reach out and ask the community what they need, what are their fears, and how can we help mitigate that, and how can we help you see the benefits and show that living alongside wolves can be beneficial.
We want to thank Claire Messer for all she does for Mexican gray wolves, and we want to thank Grateful Shreds for their sponsorship. I am Stan Bedell for Preserving Arizona Wilderness.